Welcome to Adventures in Solitaire. The following is part of an impromptu conversation between myself and Ken Kennedy. Ken Kennedy is the author of The Drifter and his recently released book, Star Drifter. Little did I know that he was going to be part of my first live stream, and little did he know that I had planned on doing a rules walkthrough of his book, The Drifter, on that same live stream. However, as this was my first live stream, it did not launch successfully, and I asked if he would like to do an offline voice interview, which he graciously accepted. We got online, started recording, and the conversation took off. I had no intro at all, so I decided to just go ahead and keep the conversation as it started, for the most part, from beginning to end, and I'm glad that I did. To start, we talk a bit about my son's newfound interest in solo role playing, along with our struggles. We also cover his new books and the mechanics and influences behind them. We also talk a bit about game design and his learnings along the way. So, without further ado, here is a conversation between myself and Mr. Ken Kennedy.
I see your latest video. You were getting your son into gaming.
Yeah, and that's been a long work in progress. He has some of the same issues that I have, and of
Right,
course, really everything is on a spectrum. I mean, how much you like chocolate ice cream is a spectrum. So,
right.
um, I don't know where we align on the autism spectrum or the ADHD spectrum. I know I have OCD. He may well have that. These are all common like pairings with autism. A lot of
Mm, mm,
autistics tend to have the ADHD and the OCD as a comorbidity. Uh,
right.
but trying to get somebody with ADHD where their body is literally trying to get a chemical that it's deficient in. And so what
Mm,
their body is trying to do is it's trying to seek out behavior, it's trying to seek out rewards that give that to them the quickest way possible.
mm.
And so that's why a lot of ADHDs will go to video games because the payoff's really quick on that.
Really quick.
Um,
Right, right.
Ask them to do chores though, unless you can switch your perspective through a lot of training about how those chores can be enjoyable. You're probably gonna get some anger and some pushback.
Mm,
And so try now also to convince a child who's 8, 9, even 10, even 11, whatever,
right.
that sitting down instead of a video game with a pen and paper system, reading stuff, rolling dice, writing stuff down, that payoff requires patience.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. For
So
sure, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's been a long struggle, but he's excited. He saw the video go up. I have part of another video done, but I need a little bit more recording time on it, and then we're gonna do that, and he's ready
That's
to
great.
go. I offered it tomorrow.
That's great.
So
Well,
yep,
it's just it's exposure to something a little different, right? It's a little
r-
slower form of entertainment, but when the payoffs happen, they can be quite
yeah,
enjoyable. They can
abs-
be quite stimulating, you know.
absolutely, and the solo experience in general really
Yes.
offers something that um, I don't. I don't know I don't know anywhere else that you can get that because
Right.
it it's very much a you thing. You I I I don't know. I've never experienced what I can get from a solo RPG anyway. True solo role
Yeah,
playing.
well, it's in it because it's using a very, it's using a very unique part of your mind, right? It's using a different, and it's you're channeling different parts of your mind when you're playing an RPG because it's part of that all that narrative driven, right? And painting pictures in your brain, and with the little pieces of information you do receive through the text that it just translates to something, very different but stimulating, right? Because
Right.
you're painting pictures in your mind, and it's kind of the magic of it for me in a way. It's the only group thing I can really equate it to would be actually playing even group role playing games,
Right.
because even though you're all hearing the same information, you're all if you were all to draw the picture
It's going to be different.
separately, it's
Yeah.
going to be different, right?
Yeah.
So and solo gives me that exact same experience, really.
If you're in a group and they're telling a story and you're reading the story differently, not one person is going to be able to say this is the way I see it. Now you all have to see it this way too. But when
Mm,
you're on your own, it's always that way. It's like reading a book and then watching
hmm.
a movie. The book is
Right,
tailored almost for you, it seems. Now, sometimes the story won't go the way you want it to, but the
right.
imagery is always tailored to you. No one's going to mess with that.
That's right. That's right.
But the
It's a
moment
very
you go,
unique experience in a sense.
right, but you go to a
Be-
movie,
yes,
you don't get any
you're all
choice there.
sharing the same visuals, the same sounds, the same.
Right. And then I think solo role playing goes even further because you are in some way self narrating the book that's being sort of written. I think there are a lot of people who have suggested that solo role playing is really just a creative writing exercise. I would have some pushback. I think that's a little too simplistic a way to think about it.
I don't think you're too wrong though, Matthew. I mean, I think you're right. It's depends. Some people do like the actual practice of writing it all out and connecting the dots, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Even when playing like my game, right, the Drifter, they like to as they go along, even though the events they have to be connected to a certain degree, but you're filling out those details. So
Sure.
some people do like to go ahead and actually write it all out,
They
like a
do.
book,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
That's the thing. And to be honest with you, one of the appeals of me to this game, the Drifter,
Uh huh.
was the idea that you know what, I don't really feel like reading a book with a linear story. It's going to have the same beginning, the same end. Or I don't feel like watching a movie. This is something that fell kind of in between, you know?
Right. Right.
So it allowed, like you were saying, right? It's kind of inherently yours. It's a very unique experience that what you're having there, and I don't know. It's kind of special in a way,
Sure.
because it just feels like it's your own thing, right? And you try explaining to other people, they might find it a bit strange, like, but that's kind of been the whole RPG perspective for a long time. It's just the past number of years where people are like really starting to get the hobby in
Hmm.
terms of more of a mass scale. But yeah, no, but that's the idea for me when I created the game. Really, was this idea of, I don't feel like reading a book. I don't feel like watching a movie. I need something that's closer to a book, but it's my own little story that's happening.
Right.
So,
Well, and
and
to
whether it's
get it
successful or not, that's kind of the excitement too. Whether I'm
right.
going to survive or not, or actually win the game aspect of it.
Right.
But to me, the fun of it was the idea of even creating it was like, oh, I get to kind of make this unlimited possibilities of stories that even I can't see, you know,
Sure.
because even though there's all these different possibilities that exist in the game, all these connecting dots to get to that is going to be very unique to the player,
Right. It's going to be hard to
right?
reproduce it. You have to play it
Yes,
quite a few times, more than probably
right.
anybody would ever do.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So
So
the guy Brett. So yeah,
so
sure.
when you had mentioned the creative writing process, and I agree. I think there are some people who see it as a creative writing process. Others who, for them, it's not so much creative writing process as it is the experience. And I'm curious for you. With the drifter, which I've actually got in my hands. We got that on camera. Um, d- do you find yourself when you were, I don't know if you still play that now or just go back to it every once in a while or what that looks like, but did you or do you sometimes do some of that creative writing to fill in the gaps between those events?
It was. I spent a lot of my time like reading books in the past and watching movies.
Uh huh.
To be honest with you, that it was kind of like a you know, what do I do with all this useless information? I guess I've seen so many of these stories, that you would find if someone was to sit down and go through a lot of Western movies, for example, they would see a lot of the influences of where
Sure.
they came from, right? Like the best description I heard was that it was kind of like Western tropes,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Like it's kind of an encyclopedia of Western tropes.
Sure.
So, I mean, I didn't really do that, to be honest with you. I didn't really practice the idea. I did while when I would write an event,
Uh
there
huh.
would be times where, and it's not to say that I'd be like, oh, I'm going to take from this movie specifically, or I'm going to take from this
But
book
there's an
specifically.
idea.
Right, exactly. And the process of creating the event, that okay, I know it's you're gonna rescue this woman who's in distress, whatever it may be. And then through that process of just, typing out the event number, typing out that one little sentence, I might be, oh, yes, I know what I want one of the results to be, but it wouldn't be pulled necessarily from any specific um, inspiration. It would just kind of come, I would assume, as a writer would do it,
Right.
where they were just kind of writing and then they get into that kind of that flow. And then
Right.
they would think, oh, that's a good idea. That's what happens next. But I would just be trying to, I would look at a table in an event and be like, okay, in this, you're rescuing the woman, but I know the lower results are more typically things that aren't going to be going very well for your character.
Uh
But the
huh.
higher ones are things that are going very well for your character to rescue this person. So, like maybe the result want to be, she already perished. You're too late. That'd be like the lower results. So then, yeah, there is kind of the I can't see it being much different than when someone actually types out a very linear story. They actually get into the flow of just, okay, you arrive at the location and the woman is tied to the stake and you need to rescue her and there's the evil villain there. So I mean, but I would be thinking of a number of different ones. So yeah, no, there I think it was kind of very much the same kind of process, but it didn't really align itself with exactly how a writer does it because they're only thinking of one way of it happening when I'm kind of thinking of multiple ways of it happening. So I would get myself kind of that mind frame.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I could see it as being very much a creative writing exercise in a way.
No, I got you. I got you. So when I had first heard of this, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't know if I
No,
stumbled.
sure.
I don't know if somebody recommended it to me,
Hmm.
or if it was just I think someone recommended it to me, or if I discovered it through Board Game Geeks,
Okay.
or some sort of Board Game Geek list or something like that.
Right.
So though it seems anymore, I get most of my stuff from recommendations.
Okay.
But when I had looked at it, um, you know, the first thing that hit me, and I don't think I had the option other than to have it hit me, was a couple of titles, but primarily, especially because of the hex crawl system. I think you
Right.
probably know where I'm going. I'm sure you do. Barbarian Prince,
Yes.
um, and the other. I think it was the same. It was Ares. I think was a publisher for that, along with Star Smuggler. And one of the things that I had noticed that you had done in the book was something that I really, really noticed a lot in Star Smuggler, actually, which was that, and maybe that was there in the Barbarian Prince, and I
Hmm.
don't, and I'm not recalling it that well,
Okay.
but was this idea that it's really so much pick up and play. I mean, you look at the book, you look at the events, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be. No, it's really not. Like, you read like a few pages of rules, and it says, okay, well, just go ahead and get to the events. Now, if you want to read the rules, you can. But
Right.
why don't you just go ahead and get into it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
did that have influence at all for you
Massive.
for that? Good.
Massive. Well,
Awesome.
yeah, no, definitely did. I mean, the simplicity of it, I found it very attractive. And once again, going back to the whole discussion we are having about RPGs and painting it in your mind, right? Um, I wanted to provide very little information as possible, like those games did.
Right, right.
I find like just to sprinkle enough information in there that like you see the hex, so you know what kind of terrain it is. I've given you maybe 10 words, a sentence or two tops of information, and it paints that picture. So because I was playing quite a bit for a while there, of games, before I created the Drifter, of like big box games, like lots of miniatures,
Yeah.
uh, you know, uh, hundreds and hundreds of cards.
Yep.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those games.
Right.
It's just that there was a lot of setup,
Yep.
and to get my friends over to play, it would, you would take like 20 minutes or longer to set up the game and then tear it down. Like we couldn't keep it on the table
Well,
with our current setup in our home. So it just kind of got me thinking, right? It's like, I just kind of wanted, I thought to myself, gee, it'd be nice to kind of create that experience, but trim it down, It just felt like there was just like a little too much almost going on. There was too much given away when I would read like a card or something of a particular game. It would give me all the details of the scenario. You know, you're in a darkly or a dimly lit room with the red mural paintings, and it would tell you everything that's going on in the room. I just found it to be almost taken away from the experience a bit.
Right.
So it kind of I kind of always went back to that Barbarian Prince experience in my mind. I did try the Barbarian Prince once as a kid, and I
Sure.
remember it vividly. And I wasn't even playing it, Matthew, but I saw a few kids I was hanging out with. I was hanging out with some older kids at the time. They were about 5 years older than me, but I might have been like 7 years old,
Right.
and they were 5 years older than me, and they were all sitting around, and I was kind of just being a nuisance, just kind of floating around. But they were playing Barbarian Prince,
Uh-huh.
and it was mind-boggling to me because one guy was reading all the events and the other guy was the one rolling the dice and making the decisions, that sort of thing, moving along the map as the Barbarian Prince.
Sure.
And the idea of that game, even though I didn't even play it, watching them play this and seeing this map, and that's all I saw was the map and their little figure.
Uh-huh.
And then he was reading and saying, you've come across a tribe of goblins and they're marching towards they're marching past. What would you like to do? Hearing this was just it was just it just blew my mind.
I'm willing
The
to
idea,
I,
the idea that a game is not about, not necessarily just about winning necessarily, but it can be an experience.
right, and I'm
You
willing to
know,
bet at that point in your life you probably, and maybe I got this wrong, you probably had not experienced choose your own adventure yet at that time either.
that's exactly right. Now I know it was a couple of years after that, right? The Choose Your Own Adventure
And
books,
I bet you that brought you
but
back too, a
it
little
it,
bit.
it did. It did
Yeah.
absolutely a little bit though,
Yeah.
right? But the
Yeah.
the fact of the map and it seemed a little more grander with just a
Sure.
little more details. They had the map and the tables.
Right.
But yeah, and I remember because at the time, at that age, I was playing, the standards, Monopoly, Clue,
Oh
Trouble,
yeah.
these kind of games, and
I
and
was
they're
too.
and they're
Yeah.
and they have their place and they're great. But it was always about, there wasn't really much focus on a story. So the idea that you could play a game that was a part of a story that's going to always kind of be different, and you're going to make decisions, and you're this adventurer, this heroic adventurer trying to survive, but you won't necessarily survive. Yeah, it was just very
Right.
very stimulating, and just it just took my mind to different places, really.
Right. Right. Yeah. I
So yeah,
think.
so there's no question that, yeah, the influence of Barbarian Prince is massive in the game itself. And then a couple of years later, after Barbarian Prince, I discovered friends introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons,
Right. Now that
and
would have
then
been that would have been yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
the doors were blown off.
Yeah.
Right, I can have this experience with friends as well. Like we're all sharing the same experience and making decisions what we do, and the choices are endless. I mean, you know it blew the doors off, and it was something that resonated with me. And and I'm a 46-year-old man, soon to be
Hmm.
47, and it still resonates with me.
Sure.
So I got thinking to myself, I'm going to create this game. I have all this useless information in my mind. I've watched lots of movies. I do like to do a little bit of kind of creative writing to a point, and it was just kind of, maybe I can do something like that. Maybe I can create something, and maybe some other 77-year-old like myself at that time will come along and play this game, or 10-year-old, whatever, and they'll have that same kind of mind-blowing experience
Right.
where
Right.
there's something they never forget, and it might influence them or inspire them one day to create something. So that's where a lot of the catalyst, the birth of it was, really.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So no, I mean that's awesome. You know, obviously I have my own stories. It sounds very familiar. As I was never lucky enough to get beyond choose your own adventure, really,
Mm, mm,
for many years. So I kind of envy you a little bit that you were able to experience some of that stuff at a much earlier age. But I is in regards to the drifter, in regards to and just the drifter for the moment, because I want to
mm,
get to Star Drifter, which I
mm.
am super. I had not purchased it yet. I'm going to, and that's
I'll
just the
send it
way.
to you.
That's no, that's the way it's going to be. So,
That's very kind. I
but
appreciate it.
yeah, I even I, well, we'll move past that, but it's going to happen. But I'm even looking forward to doing the DIY piece of it, putting it together. But the
Right, right.
yeah, I am so excited. So I want to touch on that. But
Yes.
the drifter, when we're
Hmm.
talking about the Barbarian Prince
Yes.
in general,
Yes.
when you were creating the Drifter,
Yes.
what like were there some mechanics or maybe other similar systems maybe that were close to this that you thought, here's these areas that I wish they would have and now I can. And what were some of those that what did that look like for you? There maybe even may have been, hey, I'm just going to add more of this because I really enjoyed that. I'm going to make sure more of this gets in here. Did you
Yes.
have any of that, and if any of those, and if so, what were some of those, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. No. Well, in regards to, I'll tell you one thing. Barbarian Prince. I remember there was an event, but I only came across maybe one or two of them, maybe just one of them,
Hmm.
where it was this great little mechanic in Barbarian Prince, where that there was a treasure, and it's told you that you had to roll which direction on the map is the treasure, and then roll like a d6 to determine how many hexes away.
Sure. Yep.
And then it was like a point of interest that I have in the Drifter. It's called point of interest, and I
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
lots of
Oh,
those
you
in the
did.
Drifter.
I literally there's an entire area just actually, if you were to take that out of the drifter would not be the same. You almost wouldn't
That's
have
right.
the drifter. So
That's right.
you absolutely took that and I love that. I had a failed recording before we had talked,
Sure.
and one of the things that it's not on camera now, it will be, was that how much I love the point of interest piece because a lot of times, I mean, there is something to be said about a random roll in a specific hex and it being modified by said hex.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hardly ever see is I hardly ever see a situation where they say, here's an objective, randomize location.
Yes.
And then, oh, by the way, here's another one. Or here's another one. And here's another one. And you could have just went with here's your next and just but you literally have multiple places where you can have multiple objectives running and you can choose, in other words, POIs, and
Yes.
you can go after those. And that is a mechanic I don't see, and that may be my just me not going after games that have that, but I
Mm-hmm.
have a
Mm-hmm.
decent clip and I don't see it a lot. And I don't see anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And a matter of fact, I appreciate you saying that because I had the same experience when I played Barbarian Prince. There was one event I came across that had that, and I thought it just kind of brought everything alive, and it kind of gave you like these little goals now, and it made the world just feel a little more alive. And more, there's more going on, and now I get to kind of chase that down, and hopefully don't lose that point of interest by the time I get there. When I get there, I hope I roll good enough that I might get something, or so I was really excited when I got that event in Barbarian Prince that I just thought, gee, this should happen a lot more.
Hmm.
So that's why I thought, well, maybe when I do my Wild West one, I'll utilize that mechanic a lot more. So that was a big one for sure, was point of interest. Because now it kind of creates the game where it just allows the game to always be a better chance of a lot more of a unique experience. So even though
Sure.
you maybe had that point of interest before, but you never had it on that hex in that part of the map now because you rolled a different direction or you're in a different place where you got it. So it's on a desert hex now this time as opposed to a forest one. So once again, about the whole imagination gets spurred along as well, right? So it just kind of really it helps the player paint different pictures and just kind of create a bit of excitement too, and give them maybe something. Also now they have a new goal. So I just think it works on so many levels, really, the
Yeah.
point of interest mechanic.
Yeah.
In regards to the rest of the mechanics,
Yeah.
and I love Barbarian Prince. I don't mean to say, disparage anybody who played as Barbarian Prince. It's a classic. It's a great game. It's just that I did find the mechanics for combat to be a bit, finicky for Barbarian Prince.
Right.
So that was one thing I did want to change in the Drifter. I still wanted to make sure it was fast, it was simple, but it still had room for like a dramatic flourishes, right? So if the attacker rolled super low, they take a light wound. They get countered attack. If you roll super high, you could end up uh, killing them in one shot, and you get to attack again. So it kind of feels like that Wild West flair where you're kind of pulling your gun out and bang, 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 and shooting, more than one guy at one time, dead kind
Right.
of thing. So
Right.
that was one thing that I felt just to change a bit compared to what Barbarian Prince had going on. in
Right.
regards to their combat. And then for skill tests, a lot of the Barbarian prints was, roll under your wits and wiles, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I just kind of wanted to I wanted to keep it table oriented. So I just thought, well, I'll go ahead and I just kind of came up with just this simple idea of, this is the table, this is the column you roll under, and then this is the skill you use, right? So
Great.
I wanted everything to be very spelt out. Like you said about rules, I didn't want there to be a lot of nuanced rules. And that's what I also found in a lot of the bigger games I played. It almost seemed like some of the bigger games that there was almost a bit of an afterthought. It's like, oh, gee, we kind of missed this. So we have to be able to fix this problem. So we have to put in the rules now that if this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, you have to do this. So I thought it took away a lot of the mechanics of the drifter. It just kind of took away a lot of that
Right.
sort of nuance issues. But and then for a Barbarian Prince as well, in regards to the treasure table, there was never really anything there. The only thing I really wanted to add to that was I wanted to make it that for the drifter, for the loot, is that there's potentially you could end up keep on rolling. So if you'll notice on the loot table, there's a
Yeah.
chance, there's an
Yeah.
asterisk on one of them there, where roll again, there's more, roll again, there's more. So all of a sudden, the really unrewarding, the lower rewarding column could all of a sudden turn to something really rewarding if you keep on rolling the um the asterisk result, right? So you can keep on rolling and making more and more. And then if you end up getting, well, I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah. No. 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 You're. Yeah. I appreciate that. That was.
But yeah, but anyway, it
Yeah.
just left more room for even more. It didn't matter who you encountered. Potentially, you could end up. There's no limit. It's like you really don't know what's going to happen at all. You could end up with with nothing, or you could end up with something, or you could end up with lots. It's hard to say, but I really wanted to open that up as well
Right.
because Barbarian Prince didn't really do that.
Gotcha. No,
So
I
that's
gotcha.
where some opportunities to make it a little different.
Right. Right.
So yes, in short, your question, yes, Barbarian Prince was a huge influence
Right.
on the
Well.
game, obviously, and
Yeah.
I don't hide that.
Yeah. I was gonna say. I mean, the odds of it not being influenced just because of and this isn't making any statements at all. So let's be clear about that. But
Sure.
the odds of it not being influenced by that, similar to the way that I think of a lot of other things, the odds of something being influenced, whether that be,
Mm.
well, it's very obvious this is a Lovecraftian influence. There's no way you get there without Lovecraft, or oh, there's no way you get here without Groundhog's Day. So,
Yeah.
right when we're thinking,
Have you been reading some of the events? Because it's funny you say that. But anyway, I'll just leave it at
no,
that.
I haven't, but because I'm trying to stay away from that, and I'm going to do a playthrough because part of what I'm trying to accomplish with the live streams that I'm going to
Yeah,
attempt yeah, um, is that I'm doing some of the stuff I would do without recording, and now I'm going to be doing it on camera, live stream, so people can talk, they can experience, and so people are going to see my reactions live. So they're going to see me
that's
like,
great.
yeah, the moans, the groans, and the cheers, and so,
It's very honest. It's a good thing.
yeah, yeah. So I knew that the only way for that not to have been effective would have just been that, and it does happen from time to time, but I knew the odds weren't that good. But I'm so glad it's a good base to start from. So, talked about the Drifter and the kind of some of the things that you liked on the Barbarian Prince. I know one of the things that it's almost impossible to do, and it happens with me with every video I do or everything I create, really almost anywhere in life or everything I do. I always look back and think, okay, well, what could I have done better? Oh man, I wish, or you know what, that person was right. I didn't even think about that. They're spot on. Well, crap, and it's too late because it's out there. But so my wit. When we're talking about Star Drifter,
Right.
what were some of those that when you look at the Drifter in a similar way, right? That we did with
Mm-hmm.
Barbarian Prince, your own work. What
Yes.
was that transition like for Star Drifter?
That's a good question. Don't make me think about it too much for the Drifter because you're your own worst critic, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
pretty soon I'm be sucking my thumb curled up in a ball in the corner, thinking about the things that, oh gee, I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have done this.
So,
But in regards to Stardrift, you're absolutely right. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say, I definitely don't want you to have to go over the things that you didn't change, but those
No,
things that, yeah. I'm
no,
sorry.
for
Go ahead.
sure. No, for sure. But in regards to Star Drifter, well, some of the feedback was, for the Drifter, I really wanted to keep it very simple, right?
Right.
There's not a lot of choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're moving around and you're just kind of experiencing the events, and your karma points allow you to only re-roll skill checks or combat checks for yourself or for your opponent,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
Right.
For Star Drifter, I opened it up where they're called destiny points now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can re-roll any roll in the entire game, but you have to keep the second result. So I opened that up.
Right.
And then also in choices of actions for options of things you can do. If you and you have to use destiny points to be able to utilize the other actions. So for
Oh,
example,
ouch.
right. So for example, but all the things you can do with the destiny points you can also purchase at like star bases and stuff, right? So it's not as though it's the only option to be able to improve things,
Uh
right?
huh. Uh huh.
So that brings in the money aspect of it, right?
Right. Right.
So for Star Drifter, it was so if you wanted to heal your character, you can do that, but you can attempt to do that, I should say, because you have to roll on a table and see what happens, but you have to spend one destiny point. You can repair your hull, but it costs one destiny point to attempt to repair your hull. If you want to upgrade the cannons on your ship, you can do that, but you have to spend one destiny point. So all these options. So and then, for example, you can upgrade your thrusters, and the idea of more choices. So a lot of the events give you options, right?
Right.
Your current trajectory. There's a ship in your current trajectory. You're aligned with their scanners pretty soon, that sort of thing. Do you want to completely avoid the ship, or do you want to remain within its trajectory, that kind of thing, right?
Right. Right.
So there a number of events give you a choice of what you want to do, to whether you wish to actually encounter that particular event, or do you want to move to an adjacent hex or take the penalty of avoiding it by staying in the current hex. So there's a lot more choices. There's a lot more choices, and there's a lot more choices. I think that's the best way to say it. There's a lot more choices, and there's a lot more. Is it more deadly too? I don't know,
Well,
but
I'm sure you'll get feedback. I know that with the drifter, that was something I kept seeing every once in a while. Was that,
yes,
yeah. And I think that what I'm hearing you say is I'm hearing mitigation. I'm hearing
yes,
less more reaction, and less watching things happen. So that choice
right.
deals with kind of both of those is what I'm hearing.
Right. Right. There's still a lot of things forced upon you, right? But yes, you're absolutely right. There are a lot more choices.
Right.
And yeah, so that was one of the things I did as well. So it's still a lot of dice rolling because I love dice rolling.
Sure,
Personally, I
I do
really
too.
like
Yeah,
dice
give
rolling.
me
You
lots
know,
of dice. Yeah,
it, it,
absolutely.
it feels like real life in a way. If I'm going to do
It's
something, I have to use my skill and I have to roll and see if I'm successful. Whether
yeah,
I'm good at it or not, there's always a chance for failure.
yeah, yeah.
You know, well, whatever happens in life, random good things and random bad things can happen. And I just think that's part of the narrative aspect, and it should always kind of be there. And once
Right.
again, I just love rolling dice. So yeah, so that's the big thing with Star Drifter. Between the difference between Star Drifter and the Drifter, there's a lot of, and then there's items you can find. There's enhancements and all these kind of other things you can find throughout the game as well that provide you even additional actions that you can do.
Nice.
So yeah, so there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that
So
can be done. There's a lot of customization.
that's a good segue for something that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about.
Sure.
Um, and uh, so you mentioned like the discovery of items. You mentioned freedom of choice, and of course, the first time you open up Star Drifter, first time you open up the Drifter,
Yes.
The events themselves are things that you have not yet seen. So are those items, or how many items. And I mean, I imagine that's hidden from the player, that they don't know that there's 5 items or 2 or 20. They probably don't know. I would imagine.
Yes.
So
Yes, that's exactly right. I did not, I don't say anything in regards to, or within the rules or the beginning of the book, there's 15 possible additional items or this kind of thing, right?
right,
Or
right,
enhancements or what did I call them in the game? Auxiliaries,
yeah.
you know?
But
So,
there's not 15 though, correct?
I don't, you know what, Matthew? I don't even remember.
Good, perfect. So I'm
I
like,
don't even know. I
don't
have
tell
no
me it's
idea.
15. so my so on that topic,
Yeah.
something, and maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm not having an open enough mind. That's something I'm learning, especially as I get older, is that
Hmm.
and given my condition, I have to understand that the way I look at things isn't always the only way, and that it's not necessarily even the right way, and it's not even the wrong way. It can just be in conflict,
I
and
would just call that the human condition, Matthew. I think
good,
we're
good,
all, you
good,
know.
good, good. so, so when I have been doing like board games, PC
Yeah.
games,
Yes.
console games,
I've done a
um,
lot of that too.
yep, yep. And I do what I would classify this the Drifter, and you may want to reclassify, but adventure games,
Definitely.
or you have your interactive fiction. So
Mm.
in all of these avenues
Hmm.
of interactivity,
Hmm.
um, the thing that seems to really keep me going back. The thing
Hmm.
that keeps me staying with it and not leaving it, and just that one more minute, one more scene. Uh, it seems to be discovery of some kind, that
Yes.
what's around the corner. And so I see like these loot crates and these whatever, or go back to the original Diablo. Like
Right.
you're constantly looking for that next thing, and then you most of the time you don't, but when you do, it's like a natural 20 on in at the right time in Dungeons
Yes.
and Dragons, and so. But that can extend far beyond the items. It can be that you found we'll go Star Drifter. You found an alien civilized evidence of an alien civilization, and while that may be okay that you found that, what does that mean in respect to the game mechanics? What does that change? And in that way, it becomes similar to an item in that it has some material effect. But it is that whole process of discovery that it seems like it's pretty important to monopolize in game design. I was curious
Right.
as a designer yourself, what your thoughts are on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, a lot of it for me is the trying to keep things vague enough in terms of descriptions of a lot
Mm-hmm.
of events that you can kind of paint your own. Like, for example, I remember, I took my nephew through the Drifter once,
Mm-hmm.
and he was 9 years old at the time,
Sure.
right? And we were playing the game, and then one of the events he came across had to do with, somebody has come for him for revenge
Okay.
for a previous wrongdoing kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the result he got had something to do with just like that person shouts profanities and hollow threats and rides away and goes away,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. But then later on, he ended up dying because he got killed by like a group of bandits or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how he ended the game. And then it dawned on me, oh, yeah. Um, and I said to him, remember that person early on in the game who came for said they're going to get you, revenge, and they shut up
What
profanities at
if?
you. I said maybe
Yeah.
he was one of the bandits,
Yeah.
that ended up killing you in the end. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why I always knew I wanted to keep it if vague, give you enough information that you know exactly what's going on, but I didn't want to paint the whole picture for you because therefore after you finish playing the game, and like you say about discovering events, that all of a sudden you might come across an event result that's like, oh wow, that really ties in actually with what happened 10 events ago
Right.
or 2 events ago, or
Right. And that.
so the discovery thing is very big because a lot of the time that's what kind of allows the narrative to really grow.
Right, and well, and I mean it allows for the discovery internally, like you two were having.
Yes.
It also allows for an external discovery practice with the creative writing for those that like to do
Yes.
that between
Yes.
events. So
Absolutely. 100%. And people have kind of done that too. I've seen some people have posted some of their stories, and it's like, 3 pages long. And I'm like, oh, this is really impressive. And I go through it. I'm like, oh, that's neat. Yeah, okay, cool. Wow. How they
right,
tie things together. And obviously a lot of them are things that I have never pieced together myself, even as someone who wrote all these events, right? Because there's just so many possibilities.
right, right.
So it's exciting to read those stories.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yes, the discovery is a huge part of it, right? But I don't think it's necessarily just discovery of what the specific event is, but the discovery is what is the narrative that's unfolding because of this event result.
Yeah,
So that's kind of an exciting aspect of it, for me anyway.
sure, absolutely. Well, and again, I think that lends to that whole. I read the book. Here's my vision. I watched the movie. Here's their vision.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's a little bit more yours.
Great way to
So,
put it.
thank you. The only thing I really, at this point, would have to ask um, is obviously, again, didn't send you any Q&A and have you approve or disapprove.
No, that's
Uh,
okay.
I am
Ask whatever you
sure,
like.
I'm sure I will forget, or I haven't thought of something I will think of later.
Sure.
Um,
No, actually.
but
I'll probably do that too in regards to answers. Oh, gee, I should have said that.
yeah, yeah,
you know,
I'm
I
sure.
should have filled in some more details with that. Whatever.
Right.
Natural,
Yeah,
natural.
yeah. If there is anything that you would like to have been asked or that you wanted to talk about, and then we can get that out there.
Oh, gee, that's a good question, Matthew. I think we've kind of covered it for the most part. The influence of the game we've discussed, the appeal of making it. Um, because really the whole thing is that I really don't know if there really is much to expand on. Like you said, maybe I'll think of something later. But I mean, at the same time, it's just kind of it was very simple, right? It was a very simple endeavor for me to do it. It was just, I wanted to make a game that I wanted to play, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what they
that's
say to
really
do
all.
anything. Any
Yeah,
really. If you write a book, write it the way you want it. That's they all say. Everyone says
right,
that.
right, and write what you know, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I felt that a pretty good understanding of the Western, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
some of my favorite movies were Westerns.
Sure.
So it was kind of so the game kind of also serves as a bit of a love letter, right?
Yeah.
So it was, and also, yeah, I mean, it was very organic that way. So I mean, there really isn't a ton to say about it. It was just kind of, I maybe I could do this, and so I put myself out there and really
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
do something that was maybe really out of my comfort zone. I felt oddly confident about it. I felt like it was just, I've played these games since the '80s, adventure games, RPG games, narrative games. So I kind of didn't give myself really enough credit almost to like be able to perhaps do something like this.
And I
I
think
have
that.
lots of useless information in my mind. So
Yeah. I think that gets away probably. I think that probably gets in the way of a lot of people's. A lot of people. And no, I'm
yeah,
almost certain that it gets in my way. So only other question that I have is
yeah,
we have the Drifter. I know Star Drifter was a long time coming, and it is something that
yes,
I feel as if, and I could be mistaken, that it probably took a long time because
yeah,
this is not a this is my thing. This is all right. I can do this today, or this is because you said a hobby. This is not only can I do this today, but I think I'm in that place to do this today, and it just took some time. Do
oh
you?
yes.
So that may be the case for anything else that you're working on. Do you have any thoughts about about anything else that maybe you've been wanting to do, or that you know that you're going to do? Or no idea.
I'm already doing it.
Awesome.
See, the whole thing is that this is actually a trilogy. So I have the Western one, I have the science fiction one, and I'm past halfway done a fantasy one. I know I was thinking to myself, gee, but it's a genre I love so much, a sword and sorcery
Well,
kind of thing.
you're serving the thematic interest. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yes, and
I
I get it. It's Barbarian Prince was also sword and sorcery, but I got thinking, there's a lot of games out there. There's a lot of games out there where there's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of newer games of dungeon crawls with a lot of similar mechanics. It's not like if I put out an old school fantasy hex crawl with, it's very minimalist, parts. Is that really so abhorrent? Is that really such a bad idea? And I was like, you know what? And no, I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, yeah, you're going to recognize the influence of Barbarian Prince for sure. But I like to think that I have, and there's going to be a number of changes in this one as well that are going to be different from the Drifter and Star Drifter, but you will still recognize that, yes, this is definitely cut from the same cloth as the Drifter and Star Drifter,
right. Well,
So,
I look back on so many things that um, I like go back to. Gosh, I hate to go back to PC games, but that's
no, yeah,
when I was young. I didn't have access to board games like we have now for solo, and I was on my own. Again,
right,
the autism. So if I
sure,
wanted to do
sure,
something that was interactive and solitaire, well, where do you go to for that? And
right.
but I think of like Doom, and how many Doom clones came out, but there
Right.
were good, not really clones, but you knew, and there's no other way that's where you
Dark
got that.
Forces.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a great example. Is Dark
and
Forces. Like
that was
I love
good.
Doom.
Yeah,
Doom was great, and then Dark Forces came out, and all of a sudden I could look up now.
yeah,
Or I could,
or
and it was
System
Star
Shock.
Wars, right?
Yeah,
And it just kind of, yeah, no, for sure,
yeah, and then
for
all the
sure.
Diablo clones and everything else. I think
Yes.
yeah,
Well, you want to hear something interesting, Matthew,
yeah.
about Diablo? I remember me and my buddies were all like, "Oh yeah, Diablo's coming out. Diablo's coming out." So we all had Diablo, and then these are all my friends that I was friends with even when we were kids. They played D&D with and stuff. The people introduced me to D&D and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized that wow, Diablo is actually based off a game called
Net
Moria in
net
the
hack.
80s.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know Moria?
Yeah, I do. It's
Oh, okay,
yeah
okay.
with the NetHack influences. So
Yeah.
basically, I no, but I want you were on that, so I'm gonna let you roll with it because you may have a different angle than I do. So I want to go for it.
Well, no, it was just that I recognized immediately the kind of the framework. It
Yeah.
was you're in a town, you can go to the town of the surface, and then when you go down into the dungeon, it's fantasy, it's sword and sorcery, just like
Mm-hmm.
Moria.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you went down to the dungeon changed.
Mm-hmm.
The layout of the dungeon changed.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what monster you're going to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
It had all the same types of creatures.
Yep.
You had to get down to the deepest level in order to fight the Balrog, which was really no different than Diablo.
All right.
So I
Pretty.
mean, I mean, and then you can get some spells that will be able to take you back to the surface of the town,
Yep.
just like in Moria.
It was a
So
skin,
yeah, it was yeah,
but
right.
but but I'm so glad that it was.
Yes,
That
yes, I loved it. I mean, it brought a freshness to it.
it really did, and nobody
Yeah.
else is doing it, and so
Yes.
yeah, I don't think there's really too much that I can see wrong with that. I'm looking for, like we got the Drifter. I'm gonna be buying well, I'm pointing at Star Smuggler, but because I don't have your book, it says Star on it. But
Star Smuggler. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Star Drifter, and then the do you already have a title in mind for the other one?
I do. I do. It's very straightforward. It's called Adventurer, a fantasy
Just
adventure game.
just adventure.
Just Adventurer. I was shocked to learn that there might be one other game called Adventurer
Oh,
from
I hate.
back in like
Yeah,
the mid
that's
two
rough.
thousands, but
Yeah.
it's I like I said, right. I like to keep us because I could not find a title that worked with Drifter for fantasy. I just couldn't in regards to the sword and sorcery that I envisioned in my mind.
Right.
I
Right.
tried,
Yeah.
fabled drifter, or fabled, all this kind of stuff, all the, fantasy drifter, and you're not a specific class.
You can't. So you can't call it. Wind drifter, mana drifter. Whatever. Some
Right.
form of mat. You So it's because it's something that drifts, somebody that drifts. So
Right,
what do you
right.
adventurer drifter? Where do you go
Well,
with
this
that? Yeah.
that's just it. So I, even though I couldn't think of something with Drifter in the title for it, I was just, for my ideas of sword and sorcery, that it's still part of the trilogy,
Yeah.
but it's just that's the name that I just thought was the simplest, and I was surprised that it really wasn't utilized. So
Yeah,
I was
me
like, okay,
too.
well,
You said that, and
you
I
know,
literally I thought that you were going to go more recent, and then when you gave that date, I was like, really?
yeah, yeah. And there's only like a game or two that's ever really kind of embraced that name, but it's so generic that you can't really, own it in terms of, like, it's not like it's Star Wars or something, or you
Right.
know.
Well, or it's really going to
So
get sought after anyway. Yeah.
right,
So,
right. Yeah. So
all
I
right.
once again, because I want to keep that simplicity going as well. But there's yeah, I mean, I already come with a name for it. I'm pretty far into it too. Yeah, I've gone, I'm pretty far into it. So
Well, at this point, you're probably getting pretty. I imagine that process is starting to get like almost rote at this point, if it's not already.
right, right.
Yeah.
There's just some couple of nuance mechanics changes, of course, that kind of thing that I just got to work out. But long as they're straightforward and simple, I'm okay with it being in the games because I don't want it to be overly complicated. Of the three, I would think that Star Drifter is the most involved, and it's not really complicated. It's just that it might be. It's just more of kind of the same, right?
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha. Well,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, if you've, I mean, you look at like Star Smuggler. Let's see back at my shelf, especially something like uh like the rack of the like is it BMS something Pandora, but the whole range of
yeah.
games. Some of them could get. I think really the Star Drifter is really the one I'm thinking of. They could get some fairly complex with like weighting and all sorts of other like really deep mechanics. So I don't. Yeah, I don't.
That was just it, right? I didn't want that. I
Yeah,
didn't want the deep mechanics, but I still wanted to make sure that the mechanics, made you, it felt aligned with what's happening,
yeah.
right? So there's ship combat and character combat now, as opposed to like in the Drifter, it was just character
I
combat,
saw.
right?
Yeah. I saw that in the on your the web page. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's handled. But
Right, right.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's, and it's because really all it comes down to is the ship combat just makes it that it's possible that your character can take some damage, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
and I think that it's been streamlined enough though that it's pretty straightforward. It's all in front of you, right? It's all on the sheets. It's right there. So there's not a lot of digging around kind of thing.
Well, it's just like the Drifter, and that's just how it was made. And that's one of the things that I noticed immediately was, oh, he did that. Thank goodness. So that was not like it was the absolute right thing to do because that's what I wanted, but I was so happy to see it there. But so
Yeah, no,
as I had stated earlier, I'm sure there's probably some questions that I wish I had asked and I'll remember, or that some things that I'm sure we both may do that a little bit. So I'm sorry if
no, no, this
yeah.
is great. I really enjoyed our conversation. I mean, it's great. I mean, I enjoy your work. I think you do great stuff. I mean, I can see your passion through your videos.
Yeah, oh, I
So,
love this stuff.
you know,
It's all the stuff I wanted as a kid. I couldn't have. It's the stuff that I would sit at home before I got my computer, and I would. You're on your own. What do you do? And I literally would like sit there with like at I don't know probably at 11 or so, and I'd sit there with notebook paper and a pencil and trying to figure out how I can do a randomly generated universe
right, right.
with random governments and random everything because I wanted to explore. And of course, I didn't know how anything at all about game design at all, so I just went wild
Well,
and it never went anywhere.
you like myself, like love to embrace your imagination. And I think that sensation as a child doesn't really something that I have not lost, and clearly yourself has not lost as an adult. It still has that same almost visceral experience when you utilize your imagination, right? And I like to think of the imagination as a very um, maybe underappreciated at times aspect of being a person, because really it's kind of what separates us almost from the animal kingdom. Is everything around us is a product of imagination. It had to be envisioned first, right?
Right.
So that's
Absolutely. we had to figure out how to take what's there and make it better.
That's right.
And
That's
it
right.
looks like you're doing certainly a bit of that with these two, and I can't wait to delve into both of them some more. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I've got anything else other than to say
No, yeah, and I
yeah.
mean, and you say you're on BGG too. You'll also see that I put. I'm not sure if you noticed, but it's no secret. But Star Drifter, just a little hint that Star Drifter, it says that I said that it integrates with the Drifter.
Uh huh.
So I'll leave it at that for you.
I was wondering, and I think I know exactly where you're going with that. I didn't, I didn't ask it, but
Yeah,
yeah. So we'll, and I won't, for those watching, if they haven't already figured that out as well, then I'll just leave that open, Nick, for them to do the same. But I obviously don't
right.
know the full details, so we'll see. I can't tell you how kind you've been, how easy you made it for me. It is a first interview with no prep on my part. That is
Well, I couldn't
not.
tell. It seems like you've done a lot. So
Yeah, no. Well, yeah. Part of it was the work you had. Of course, is my own personal interest there. I think too, because I Barbarian Prince. Come on. But yeah,
Stone Cold Classic.
yeah. So, yeah, just thank you for taking the time. And
No, thank you.
I can't wait to hear back from you, see more of you if I can, and if you're able. And I appreciate you.
Well, maybe we'll do it again sometime. I would like that.
I would too. I would as well.
Well, I look forward to what you put out, Matthew, and thank you for the time.
Well, you too, Ken. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye, Matthew.
Bye bye.